Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to take a moment to thank everybody for your continued support as we grow. Please be sure to check out our other channels as you learn about them. There are some in the details section down below. Feel free to go over and check those out. Drop some comments. Let me know what you think about those developments. As it is, again, part of a authors guild. And along with that, we got the StreamYard link down there for anybody that wants to join. And we're going to talk about cooperative trust tonight. So everybody's input is greatly appreciated. So again, StreamYard link is down there for anybody that wants to join. I always do appreciate outside insight, angles that I'm not particularly experienced with. So things like this, always a great help to have other people on the panel. And we're going to talk about that cooperative trust, and I hope everybody understands the very term cooperative. Everybody thinks it means that you get along peacefully, and that's exactly what it means. But it's got a co-operative. What is the operative? What is the mechanism? Are you the mechanism? And where does that trust come from? How do you cooperate in that method? That's the prerogative term that we're thinking about. And that's what they express in many different venues. Equity being equity. If you want equity, you must first bring equity. Contracts always contain elements of a peace treaty. This is the hold harmless and indemnification aspect, that contracts are not a matter of a law, but rather arbitration. Therefore, it's a negotiation. These are all terms meaning the same thing. So it's a matter of learning not only how to cooperate with yourself, but all of the other individual departments, agencies, programs, people, persons, officers, whoever they are, and whatever that title or office that they have. You've got to be able to learn how to cooperate with them. And so the first thing I want to point out tonight, let me pull it up, is 32 CFR 1602.4. And I keep reiterating, everything is military, folks. And so when we talk about operations, you know, things that doctors do, that's a military term. Pay attention. 32 CFR 1602.4, area, office. Area is what? Well, that would depend on what kind of area you're talking about. There are subcategories such as special maritime territorial jurisdiction. There's admiralty, there's common law, there's UCC. You know, these are the different areas that they practice in. You ever been to a Renaissance fair, folks? That's what this is all about. They're all practicing. It's a big show. 1602.4, area office, the selective service office, which is responsible for all administrative and operational support. Military Selective Service Office for the one or more local boards within its jurisdiction. Now tell me how anybody under the U.S. Code that is administrating or operating anything to do with commercial paper or command paper, demand paper, is not involved with the Selective Service and the military branch. It is military. So let me show you one more thing confirming it. This is the Lieber Code. And under Article 10, we see it says clearly and distinctly, martial law affects. It is an effect from a mechanism. It is an effect of cooperation. Martial law affects. What are one of the Okay, where did we lose me? Where did we lose me? How long has it been out? It says 9:08. So let me go back, and I'm just going to do the Lieber Code part all over. It's just two parts of the Lieber Code. So let me pull my screen up again, and my apologies for that, folks. They will throttle me until I can get it all figured out. That's what we're going to call it, throttling. Okay, so under the Lieber Code, we saw that or we've spoken about the hospitals and the schools and everything being military operations. And we saw under the Selective Service Office, the operations and administrations, all of which are in the jurisdiction of the Selective Service Office. That's a military service. So Article 10 confirms that of the Lieber Code, and it says martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes. Now notice it says affects, and affects is both those things of war and peace. And it chiefly affects the police and collection of public revenue and taxes. The revenue was from the private, and now everything is considered public. This is your identification. You created a public identification that everybody in the public gets to ask you, hey, can I have your identification, please? You go to Walmart, you do a money transfer, they want your identification. Okay? That's an obligation or other security of the United States. So what is a bond? Under obligations and other securities of the United States, includes all bonds. Martial law chiefly affects the police and collection of public revenue and taxes, which is a authority of Congress. You have to communicate with Congress in order to be able to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises. So they supposedly have a congressional communication with Congress to do so. You don't. Whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support. It is a porting issue, import, export, and efficiency of the Army. So the United States is a corporation, but it is a military corporation. You know, Company A, Company B, Company C. It's the ABC companies. Don't you get it? Did you not listen to Sesame Street? Its safety and the safety of its operations, not administrations, not legislative system, not executive arm. No, it's operations. Those are field operations in the field, the area. So let's continue on to next article is 139. 139 is under no, it's wrong. Where is it? Is it? No, there we go. Armistice, capitulation. And 139 says, Article 139 in Armistice is binding upon the belligerents. So you've got an identification that says you're a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. Now, the board being the Secretary of Commerce as the executive chair and the Secretary of Treasury, you have to have that communication with Congress to be able to collect public revenue, right? That's public. So when you hand over that identification, you're in that public revenue system and you're admitting that you're no longer private. That's a self-guilt admission. Armistice is binding. Is that a bond? The United States is a military corporation, people, by the very grammar.
Can you open a can for me?
And so you'll have to bring the stuff here.
You have a place to plug in there.
Yep. And so we've got the belligerents are the ones that are making a false claim. You're claiming to be a resident when in fact that's not true. And I'm telling you, and I'm giving you plenty of evidence, material fact evidence in the public record, in the U.S. code, and you can find it in your state codes. And I'll pull the one up for Iowa to show you a resident determination for Iowa code. It's astounding when you read this stuff and realize that, hey, for my instance, I haven't been employed and have had no income or a bank account for multiple years. They wanted the identification back. I've still got it. I'm holding it for evidence, and there's nothing they can do about it. Because when they catch me with that thing, I can explain every element on it. I no longer need it. It is merely material fact evidence. So when we get back to this, from the day of the agreed commencement. So if you don't have a agreement with Congress that they can lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises against you, then you're obviously foreign. But by taking upon that resident ID, you become domestic, and you give the address, or you do an address change upon the age of 18 when you go out amongst this world, and that's an agreement with the post office. Guess what? You gave them a social security number saying you're an officer. Hold on just a second, folks. I'll be right back. Please just stew on that. And remember, the StreamYard link is down there for anybody that wants to stop on up. Okay, I'm back. Thanks for waiting, folks. So we see the next one says, but the officers of the armies are responsible from the day only when they receive official notice of its existence. So it's a matter of making sure they understand what law you're following. And as I discussed in a meeting earlier today, when you call up or get a hold of, and I believe her name is Jane Fitzgerald at the National Archives, and request a certified copy of the Constitution 1787 and the Bill of Rights 1789-91, she will send you a certified copy. Upon that, that's your standing of the law as following the law of God, or understanding of the law of God and upholding the supreme law that you know. And that's basically what those documents are putting out, is that common law is the supreme law of the land. The Constitution poses the supreme law of the land, which is your common law. What's the common law? Common law is the militia, the military. It doesn't have anything to do with commerce yet. Here we've got a whole backward, an entirely backward system where we've got the United States as a commercial corporate entity, yet it's a military. This is a political body mixed with a corporate body. That is the socialist statism. In case you didn't understand that. That's effectively what it is. And that's effectively. So let's take a look at the next one. We're going to get into this cooperative trust and how we do that stuff. What's going on here? There we go. Okay. Here we have cooperative trust. The cooperative trust provides opportunities for rising credit union talent, specifically young and emerging professionals. So the rising credit union talent is the rising of knowledge, the learning, the one becoming proficient in such things. And notice it says credit union. Now this is from Filene. It says members of the trust join and contribute to building a strong network of continuous and collaborative learners, create and curate professional and community development, content, and experiences, and develop strong loyalty and activism within the credit union industry. Let me pull up. What is a merger, folks? What is a merger? Greetings, witness. Trying to pull up my other file here. Okay, a merger. And this is 12 CFR 708A.301. Merger means any transaction in which a credit union transfers all or substantially all of its assets to a bank. The term merger includes any purported conversion of a credit union. Notice credit union isn't capitalized, just like bank. So these are real ambiguous terms. Credit union. It's a union of creditors. or union of documentation that would be credit. So it doesn't have to be multiple people. It could be your own documentation. It's a union of credit information. So it doesn't have to be a credit union of people. It's a credit union of information. To a bank, if the purported conversion is conducted pursuant to an agreement between a pre-existing bank and the credit union, that provides the credit union will not conduct business as a stand-alone bank. The purported purpose it was purported for, the purported conversion will be followed by the transfer of all or substantially all of the credit union's assets to the pre-existing bank. And the assets are held in escrow while you provide the bank with collateral documentation. So, when we think about this stuff, that document you sign at the hospital when you have a baby is it's a security instrument that can be brought forth as a surety bond. Everything was supposed to have been done through a cooperation agreement somewhere that's already set. There's already a cooperation agreement. That's the implication that everybody's missing. If there's already a cooperation agreement implemented, then why are we not using it? Because most people don't understand how to use it. And like I said, when you call or get a hold of Jane Fitzgerald at the National Archives and request those two documents, certified copies of those documents, now you can make your presentation to the probate court that you're actually exercising your jus soli and your jus sanguinis. You're of the soil of the blood, and that's of the soil. That's not you. You're not a man on the land. You're a man of the land. All those little words, terms, and conditions really mean a difference. And you're a man of the land. You're a man of your mother. You were rendered by your mother earth. This is the womb, and we are merely passing through. And just as a man is discharged of his mother's waters from the womb, we too will be discharged of our mother's waters at the end of our earthly lives, where we will die, as the term is used. We will pass on, and the passing on is the depletion of all the water in our body. We will dry up and become dust to the dust again. This is all natural processes that we observe in the rest of life, and we're nothing better. We try to pose ourselves better and bury each other in caskets and stuff. Yet there are many cultures around the world that still do pyres along the riverbanks in India. They're still feeding the catfish with the leftover remains, just dumping it in the river. It's amazing stuff. And that's the true cooperation I think we're supposed to have. But as it relates to these fictional trusts, let's get back to that as it relates to this personal world. And so it says, I am accepting it as a personal and professional challenge to create spaces that empower and encourage each other to be brave. I don't want you to behave. Behave means you have to sit there and be in your comfort zone and know that if you go beyond those bounds, that you're going to suffer consequences. I want you to be brave in your intuition, knowing that if you break certain bounds, there's the aspect of learning from experience that will improve your situation. It says active members of the community develop both personally and professionally, learning, discussing, and practicing an array of topics related to. This is why it's important. We have to realize this self-government thing is a matter of having an array of topics that we're knowledgeable and experienced in. This goes back to the aspect that if you don't know what banking is, then why are you handing your finances over to a banker you don't even know, let alone know better than to trust? He's getting paid to do the shit. That's why Jesus flipped the tables, people. It will never stop. As long as you keep handing that shit over to them, they will always find a way to bite a little tip off that coin and pass it on to somebody else. By the time it comes back to you, there ain't nothing left. Got to quit doing that. So let's read on to the next part. It says, leadership, these are the topics it's related to. Innovation and incubation, this is where you bring thought to growth, thought in concept and growth, so that it becomes an actual material manifestation effect. Community development, it's not a selfish thing. When your cup welleth over, then it welleth over to everybody. Credit union business models. Data analytics, you have to know what kind of data you're giving them, as well as what kind of data you're operating on. Talent recruitment and engagement. This is that autism scale. We've got to be aware of that autism scale, and I'll be damned, you got to quit you got to quit casting pearls before swines, and know what those pearls are yourself. So we continue on, and it says diversity, equity, and inclusion. When it says the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner in equity, that's what we're talking about. Again, I urge you people to reconsider what the true benefit is. The true benefit is the knowledge. It is not the thing. It is not the name. It is not the title. It is not the office. It is the knowledge. That is the thing that cooperates. It is the one that mechanizes everything. It's the thing that gets things moving. It's the thing that stops things from moving. It's the thing that puts the horse or the cart in front of the horse. It's the thing that does all of that, good and bad. Learn how to organize it and cooperate with what is the intended effect. So let's go on to the next one. As it says, consumer life events. That's that entire accounting. You have to know what you're doing with that identification and the system that uses it, or it's used in. So the next one I've got opened up is community investment trusts and cooperatives. You got anything you want to say first, witness? Or are you good? You're good? All right. I don't want to seem like I'm just rambling on and not letting anybody say. I appreciate everybody on the table or on the panel, but I thought I saw you writing notes too, so I kind of wonder sometimes. Anyway, it says community investment trusts and cooperatives allow neighborhood residents or other stakeholders to pool resources to purchase community-owned real estate. This is part of the solution if we're going to go in and they're going to talk about pooling your resources to invest in real estate, then that investment should be the pooled resources of redemption. And what I'm talking about here is one person is all it takes to get something set up right. And then in a cooperative trust, a second person comes in, and the first person, through knowledge and education, it can help direct, not administrate, not execute, not promote, but direct the mechanism for the next guy, then the third guy, then the fourth guy. And as each one starts collecting or getting their stuff right and doing that redemption of land, it becomes a cooperative land trust. That's how you rebuild these communities that you're thinking of, in my opinion. Okay? And this is why I strongly suggest cooperating with the Wildlife and Fisheries Management National Forest Service under the grants of managing watersheds. Arizona property that's dry and desolate that can be enhanced through water shedding. We have things available today that will gather the moisture out of the air, and we can actually start creating little ponds and stuff. There's architectural structuring of the landscape that we can do, building little half moons with crevices, little divots or something in the ground, so that when it does rain, it will help collect that moisture instead of allowing it to run off. This will gradually heal up the soil and make it more fertile and tillable. This is all stuff that we have already observed through nature. There are already programs for cooperative agreements as such things, and I think people just need to understand the ability of the military to help in those cooperations. I've spoken before about my companion and I. One of the possibilities that as we get older in age, and one of these times when we move, if we don't actually get a piece of land ourselves, one of our options is to go ahead and get a place on a military base. Again, we're talking about obligations and other securities of the United States, and that's all bindings. And if there's an armistice, then that armistice goes back to the scripture where if you have a weary traveler and need a place, then put him up. And I guarantee you, if my companion and I have already worked for this system for a multitude of years, we've already given into this system, so therefore it's a quid pro quo on receiving a benefit. And it is a direct operational military benefit at that, rather than a fiat currency benefit, which is a paper bond that they want us to securitize through our own signatures, claiming that we're officers when we're not. That's the whole problem, folks. It's the wrong kind of agreement, unless you know about it and can set the cooperations correct. That's all it is. It's a matter of correcting the record. It's not a matter of coming at them as a belligerent. Hey, the idea itself is telling them that you have some kind of cooperative agreement, okay? So you can use it against them in that aspect to show, again, every contract has an applied amnesty, armistice, agreement, saying that the negotiations have been had and people are going to cooperate. That's the reason why they hold these statutes and codes against you, is because somehow now you say you're not going to. Well, I don't believe I'm guilty. That's why they put that test to you. You have to be innocent, outside of the judicial element, before the judicial element. The spiritual element, the merits, where the credit comes from, that operates and mechanizes this entire monetary system. It's a mechanism, that signature. Oops. So it says community investment trusts and cooperatives are for-profit entities that help communities invest in themselves and secure space for small businesses and other cooperatively controlled uses. This is that public, the public accommodation. Those are all cooperative agreements, and that's what they're using for the public accommodation. If you go into some place and they say that you want to, you need to wear a mask in order to receive services, it's part of their new cooperative agreement internally, and they're trying to extend it outwardly. You have to go to a greater cooperative agreement to defeat it. You can't just say, no, I'm not subject to the mask law. You have to be able to bring a greater law. That's why I mentioned that Constitution of 1787 and the Bill of Rights 1789-91. It's important, and I'm so glad that the people in this morning's meetings brought that up, because it is so important to be able, again, if you want to bring equity, if you want equity, you must first bring equity. So if you want to stand on those laws, then you have to bring them in certified form. That's a validation that they can't deny, and they're the ones that took the oaths to them. But again, you have to know what those Constitution and the Bill of Rights are all about. You have to be able to articulate those. They have articulable reasonable suspicion. You have to be able to articulate otherwise. Investment trusts and cooperatives can help residents build equity and wealth while also providing small business owners with affordable space and opportunities to remain in place. This is, I think, what a lot of the homeowners associations are doing in regards to these evictions. They're using their own little cooperative agreement trust, real estate investment trust as homeowners associations to do this stuff, and that's why you're not getting any relief there. I believe that makes very reasonable sense, and I think that's a big aspect of it, and that's because they have the knowledge of these laws. So again, if you want to be able to beat them, you have to know these laws and the other law that beats them. You have to be able to articulate. It's important, folks. So let's see. Strategies in action. It says the guild. Remember what I talk about, the Authors Guild? I mentioned that at the beginning of the stream tonight. Get to know the channels and understand what the guild does. Guild means pay. Georgia Social Impact Collaborative, Atlanta, Georgia. The Guild, Georgia Social Impact Collaborative, is a social enterprise focused on community-led real estate development. Started in 2015, it is Atlanta's first co-living company and space for entrepreneurs, artists, and community organizers that offers accelerators for BIPOC small businesses. We'll have to find out what that is. And real estate developers, small business, coaching, consulting, and curated commercial retail, office, and event space. Retail, office, and event space. So this is more of a business expansion type thing rather than a business and land trust expansion. And this is an important difference in the aspect of building these communities. We're building these communities with each one being capable of having their own piece of land, not necessarily connected to the next piece, but still remain in a cooperative trust because of the documents, the analytic data elements, which is the cooperative agreement, allowing each one to be able to do their own trade separately and distinctly, use their own land for separate, distinct things. One might want to use it for timber rights, while the other might want to use it for agriculture, while another might want to use it for grazing stock, whatever. They're all different uses, and that's what it's about: possession and use in redemption, so you can fulfill the law of replenishing Mother Earth. That's our primary duty. In replenishing Mother Earth, we're supposed to minister the gospel not only to other men, but to the creatures. But in that, while we're ministering the gospel to other men, it's as a prophet unto the nations and not as a national or under those national things. So again, it's a matter of coming outside of those jurisdictions and being able to enforce your authority by knowledge, not by force. The power of knowledge is greater than the force of knowledge. It has since expanded its Okay, how long was I out this time? 9:42, so another minute again. Let me get my screen share back up. So shortly after I started reading again. So let's start right back here. It has since expanded its mission to create a pathway for property ownership. And I want to stress here that the ownership, property ownership, when it comes to the land and stuff, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. So you don't own the land. And just like the native said, you are of the land, you will go back to the land. This is God formed man of the dust of the ground, and you shall return to the dust, dust to dust. It's well known, and we just have to be able to stand with that. So it continues on, says, through its flagship, expanded its mission, ground cover initiative, the organization aims to seed and develop community-owned and community-controlled real estate models that allow marginalized communities to collectively steward assets in their neighborhoods, creating pathways to build power, resilience, and self-determination. So again, that's that community that we can develop that doesn't necessarily have to be a parcel of land here that Bob owns and a parcel of land right next door that John owns. And then you got 20, 30 different people that own land next to each other. The collective and the cooperative agreement is that community. It's not necessarily the land community. Each one of those is a redemption of their own and gets to profess their own heritage, we'll call it, their profession, their trade, their talent. One might be a blacksmith, one might be a horticulturist and want to do some agriculture. Another might be a, a, a flock tender and use it for grazing and stuff. It's a matter of how each individual wants to use the land, and the diversity in that allows for a local community, not necessarily parcel by parcel, but within a certain community, traveling distance certainly, that could have an equal share in prosperity of each other through their different talents. You don't need necessarily a monetary system that way. So the next one, and of course, it's creating pathways to build power, resilience, and self-determination. That self-determination is that self-government. And that's why I say it's not necessarily, again, one plot of land here and another one right next to it and right next to it. The community is based on the cooperative agreement that you all agree in here. It's the intangible. So the next one I've got is placing a co-op in trust. So the co-op for me would be the Keith Orland Little FBU. It's a faith-based union. It's a cooperative agreement that we all live our life based in faith, and that we operate, that this is a faithful saying, that I will, that thou affirm constantly, he who believed in God, be careful to maintain good works, for these are good and profitable unto men. That's the premise. And in being careful to maintain those good works, we think about things before we do them. When we do them, we seek equity. We must first bring equity. So we always come in good faith, always. They are trying hard tonight, folks. They are trying hard. So let's go on to the next one here. If you are currently a shareholder in a co-op and want to implement an asset protection strategy that involves transferring your shares and proprietary lease to a trust, you will need the co-op board's approval. I want to ask you how many of you live in rural areas where they have farm co-ops and utility co-ops and water co-ops, and you went in and paid a deposit. I want to ask how many of you know that that's what those utility companies are operating on, is cooperative agreements in trust. Therefore, it's a cooperative trust. This is basic language, folks. It's a matter of finding that proprietary interest. And again, you signed a document somewhere and you gave them something of value that created a binding. And that's a military operation, folks. So this is another good reason to retain an elder law firm experienced in addressing these matters. If the board says no, a knowledgeable attorney may still be able to persuade them to change their mind and allow you to move ahead with the plan. Well, a knowledgeable attorney would be able to determine the equity in it, and that alone would remove it from any court at law that would be able to deny a beneficiary as being a true owner. Oops. And again, folks, this is not legal advice. I am not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I do not practice law. I interpret what is put before me, and if you have a problem with it, that's why I have an open panel. Please come up and discuss it, and maybe if I'm wrong, we can fix it. So, we have found several approaches that have a track record of success with co-op boards. Explaining the elder law plan and why it is important to change the title to the apartment. Proving ability to pay the co-op maintenance. See, that's part of the whole thing when you go into these homeowners associations and you start renting or something, and you're paying a maintenance fee. You're renting for a maintenance fee. Yet you don't put a fee schedule forth for your fee to carry out those maintenances. One of which is a maintenance of a record as a holder and a liable party. See, it's not necessarily just the signature that you sign that creates a liability. What creates a liability is the fact that you're holding a record and using the record to validate the signature on your own action. Whereas if somebody else is holding that record and you give a signature, now they have to contact them to see if the signature is valid. Big difference. So the next one, it says, agreeing to put money in an escrow account to cover a certain amount of maintenance. Now, again, that escrow account is much like that prepaid insurance. If it's being held in escrow, so that if something goes wrong with the transaction, they can come get what they need out of the escrow. That acts the same thing as insurance. Don't you get it? It's a prepayment. It's saying the assets are here, they're held in escrow until the completion of the contract. Once the contract is complete, the funds or assets are released from escrow. Boom. So again, that cooperative trust of placing assets in escrow through somebody that's allowed to hold such escrow, such as real estate investment trust, holding real estate investment property for another real estate investment trust, which would be a cooperative agreement. Guess what, folks? I believe the Postal Service is the one that holds the real estate investment trust. Would you like me to pull it up one more time? See that municipal government? That's a cooperative agreement between yourself and the mayor. It's a mayoral form of government, which means a major form of government, meaning it's the form of government at the resident level. And they're issuing municipal security bonds. You're acting as the mechanism. You're the one that's allowing it to happen because you don't know better. We're hoping you learn better. The next one, entering into an agreement that the trust will be responsible for the co-op's collection expenses if there's a problem regarding payment. The trust will be responsible for the co-op's collection expenses. That means the paperwork has to follow the law, not you. In you following the law, you're not practicing. You're just discovering errors and fixing them along the way. That's all you can do. That's the only power you have. He will enforce everything else. So, the next one, making a commitment that any occupant of the apartment will be subject to the advance approval of the co-op board. Making a commitment that any occupant of the apartment will be subject to advance approval of the co-op board. It's quid pro quo. In these homeowners associations, it's a matter of a term or condition of contract. Well, let me read the contract. It says that's what you got to do. Well, I'm telling you, that's what I have to do. I have to be included. It's got to be equal consideration, equal benefit. So if there's a hold harmless indemnification agreement implied in here, yeah, that's equal consideration, equal benefit. That sounds like immunity, government immunity, as long as you stay within the bounds of doing your job and not doing it for pay, where you start exercising your private right of contracting, saying, I'm subject to you without proving the law. I'm sorry. Now we have a conflict of law, and you stepped outside of your bounds. So the next one, agreeing that the apartment will be sold after the current occupant dies or transferred only to someone approved by the co-op board. That's a violation of contract law, folks. When you have something that is in the public purview and you want to sell it, it has to be, again, that public accommodation. It has to prove that you're a cooperative agreement. You can't expect that you're going to be able to get away with discriminating against anybody on the land. But yet they do it. That's part of the whole process. You have to be able to recognize this stuff, folks. The goal is to convince the board that the transaction doesn't hurt the co-op and can be consummated in a way that won't expose the building to any additional risk. While no firm can guarantee getting board approval every time, Lamson and Kuttner has been successful in almost every case. So there's some information for you from Lamson and Kuttner on elder law and estate planning. When we want to start correcting these records, that's going to be part of it, and we have to let him know and that we have some kind of knowledge. That means you've got to be able to do some research yourself. And I'm not just talking about this Lamson and Kuttner people. I'm talking about anybody that wants to profess they're an attorney or a lawyer or has some kind of knowledge. You have to be able to quid pro, this for that, equal consideration, equal benefit. If you really expect that you're going to go in rebutting some kind of facts that have been sitting on the record for decades and can't rebut them and have them assert or enforce your rights simply because you think you have those rights, you're never going to accomplish it. You have to be able to show the power of your right, and that is the knowledge, not the enforcement through physical contacts and stuff. That's proving that you're that belligerent. That's proving that you are the guy in the ID. So let's look at the next one. International Union of Operating Engineers Cooperation Trust. See, they're trying to get slick. I'm catching on. So this is International Union of Operating Engineers. So it's a union, just much like a credit union, right? See how all this stuff interplays, folks? So now we have an International Union of Operating Engineers. Now the operating engineers do work. So this is an operating labor union. So again, it's a matter of your equity of sweat equity as well as your intellectual property. But you have to be able to maintain its privacy. In order to maintain its privacy, you can create a cooperative agreement between yourself and the entity, and that itself creates a trust. Understand how this stuff works, and learn how to start placing those cooperations in the different places that you need to. You'll see a lot of my videos in the past, and still some today, where I get the bitch ass slave thing going or something. But that's just my passion and everything, as far as today goes. But back in the day when I first started, I was really wanting to go after these people and file a lawsuit and all that. And that's just showing that military affronting as wanting to go to war or being in a war and wanting to stay in the war, instead of constantly saying, hey man, I'm just a peaceful being. I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to be affrontive. I don't want to be offensive. But again, there's always that time to be offensive, people. You're folk road boys and girls now. It's time to start acting like it. Quit being the bitch ass slaves. So let's look into this one next. And then I'm going to go to Investopedia and look at that bond. We're going to look at a bond through Investopedia. Operating Engineers Local 4 strives to have strong collaborative relationship with our employers. Why would they say such a thing? Equity acts in personam. It seems to me, and I can't say for sure, it's still a question in my mind, why would they say something like that, employers? But it seems in my mind that they maybe recognize that the person here is the documentation, the trust, and that's who's legally responsible and this and that. And so they're making a distinction that the employer is the paperwork that says they have the authority to operate as they are operating. Somewhat similar to the United States, right? Anybody know who's hired by the United States? Who's employed by the United States? Every last person that holds an identification. That's the presumption, folks. In addition to our collective bargaining agreements, we are proud to be a partner with our 4 major employer associations. So now they're a partner. See? They are partnered with their employers as a trust operation on a labor management, so it's a labor union, cooperation trust, similar to other unions. The jointly trusted cooperation trust is funded as a Taft-Hartley fund under Section 302C9A or 302C9 of that Act. The Taft-Hartley Fund Act and what was that? Section 302C9. Oh, and this is first one is Department of Justice. Criminal resource. This is archived content. 29 U. Okay, I am going to guess that it has been since I moved over to the Department of Justice site. So I'm just going to start over. Outline of 29 U.S.C. 186 Taft-Hartley Act, Section 302. Prescribe bribery, graft, and conflict of interest. Oops, let me get my screen share up first. There we go. Says prescribes bribery, graft, and conflict of interest payments of money and other prohibited things of value to representatives of employees, labor union officials, and labor organizations by employers, and persons acting in the interest of employers, such as the United States, whose labor management relations are governed by the Labor Management Relations Act of 29 U.S.C. 141 et sequential, which is the United States, of course, because that's a United States code, like I said. The request or acceptance by any person of payments described in the statute is also prescribed or is also prohibited. The request or acceptance by any person of payment described in the statute is also prohibited. There's a conflict of interest. What is the conflict of interest? I'm extrajudicial. There's been no judicial determination. How do I prove this? The certificate of live birth that the county registrar holds does not have a financial statement of intent. Conflict. There is no intent to mechanize this stuff. It was based on a false prerequisite of citizenship that determined that I was a resident under Iowa code, which means for income tax purposes. That means it was intended that I become an officer or agent of the federal, state, or municipal government. It never happened. It's never been determined. Never was an officer. Yet they indoctrinated myself and everybody else to believe that we needed that identification first before we become that officer. Sorry, not part of your cooperative agreement. Didn't know it was such a setup that made requirements of me taking upon a liability that would cause me detriment and harm for the rest of my life, according to a record that is false. Undocumented aliens who are employed within the United States are subject to the LMRA, provided that their occupations are not otherwise excluded from coverage. The statute does not apply to payments affecting the labor management relations of agricultural employees. Did you know agricultural employees, they are not required to pay overtime? Those are private contracts, specifically for your labor. Domestic laborers, governmental workers, or employees in the railway and airline industry. See 29 U.S.C. 152(2) and 3. Unlawful payments by railway and airline carriers. It all has to do with that payment, folks. It's never been paid. Nothing's there by your signature. Nothing has ever been paid. You've never paid anything by your signature. It's never been corrected. That's the payment, and that's the redemption. So let's go back. It says the overall goal of cooperative trusts is to expand job opportunities and increase employee satisfaction. Our Labor Management Cooperation Trust is a partnership designed to provide a forum for communication between union operating engineers and signatory contractors to address mutual concerns and encourage reasonable and fair solutions. So it sounds like the trust is making agreements through signatory contractors, which would be outside contractors, signing. That's what it sounds like. One of its features is periodically surveying construction trends to ensure our signatory employers and the union are keeping up. So it shows that they take on the responsibility of oversight to make sure that their employers, as they call them, which are partners, so now there's an equal station in life, so they have that awesome duty, responsibility, and ability to be able to do so. That's the power. Knowing that equal station in life, that you're going to hold them accountable because they're holding you accountable to equal consideration, equal benefit in equity. No, trusts owe taxes not if they're private. If you're going to administrate and operate through a public bonding system, then they are taxable because you're using public bonds. But when you learn how to open your own private trust and issue your own bond, again, it's based on that security that was established when you were born. That's a security instrument, and you can use that to create your own surety bond because it is evidence that something was put up as surety. There's 3 signatures on it. Mom was the informant. The other 2 agree that it was a surety bond of some sort because they assured that with those 2 signatures, it holds full faith and credit. That's what the seals are about. So let's go on with the next one. Like I said, we're going to talk about Investopedia. Investopedia has a collateral trust bond. And like I said, with the escrow, you have your asset held in escrow, and you have a cooperative agreement with somebody in trust. And that is a collateral trust bond. This is the binding. This is the armistice. This is the peace treaty. This is the negotiation that you have come to terms that we are not combatants. We are not belligerents. We are full-grown boys and girls, and we know how to speak to each other in peace without calling each other names or trying to take each other's property. Pure and simple. So let's take a look at it. It says, what is collateral trust bond? What is it? How it works? A collateral trust bond, also known as a collateral trust certificate or collateral trust note. So now we see that a note, which is a promise to pay, it's a promissory note, is the same thing as a bond. And all bonds are promises then. It's the same thing. It's just a promise. It's a piece of paper where you put your thoughts, your intellectual thoughts that say, okay, this is our plan. That's all it is, folks, a plan. If it doesn't go as planned, then maybe it was an act of God. It doesn't have to be demonic. It doesn't have to be bad, evil. It doesn't have to be a false claim. It doesn't have to be an accusation. So it says, is a bond that is secured by one or more financial assets, such as shares of stocks or other bonds, that is deposited and held by a trustee for the holders of the bond. So again, if you have a asset that's being held by a third party in escrow and you create a document in bond form saying that you have this property and you promise that if something happens in this contract that causes harm, damage, or injury, that they will have access to that asset for their collateral damages. When the contract is complete, that so-called asset is released. Period. The contract's complete. Now we're done. This is the same premise as an insurance payment. You paid insurance for a month. You were supposed to receive a benefit. Instead, they sent you a coupon as a bill. You don't know how to do that and get it discharged to have them reissue again that same principal amount to and so you don't know how to use the coupon at the bottom to give a directive through a trust to say, hey, I want my benefit. What's the benefit, folks? If they invested in that trust, now you have a coupon that has a principal amount that was invested. You are the principal. You're supposed to have an income on that. That's your that's your that's your that's your return. That's what they call income. If that's what you're going to be operating through. Otherwise, you give a directive that, hey, it's already been prepaid. We don't get a benefit. We get the use, which is the benefit of the utilities, which is provided everybody, whether you pay for them or not, because it's a mandatory thing in life that we have shelter. So it's already provided, and that part of the system's already paid for through that monetary system of insurances. That's an insurance only. It's not backed by any assets. They're using that system against you, a system that has no assets, to gain the assets for their own private gains. This is when that judge steps out of his office and tries to administrate without the authority to do so. Now he's acting privately in rem, which means he's after the property, wanting to steal it from you for his own gain. That's the emoluments violation. No, you can't do that. Again, it has to be military necessity, as we saw earlier. Chiefly the collection of public revenue and taxes, not private property. See how it's all confused and they don't know exactly what they're doing? Because the law is clear. The law is clear, folks. So let's see. Let's continue on. The bond is perceived as a safer investment than an unsecured bond, since the assets could be sold to pay the bondholder if necessary. So the bond itself is the collateral, and it's a bond in trust to be able to collect the asset and sell it off to recoup any loss. It's that simple, folks. Collateral trust bond is a type of secured bond in which a corporation deposits stocks, bonds, or other securities with the trustee so as to back its bonds. So again, it's the asset that's sitting there. Now you can write a bond. That bond is used for a contract, whether it be short-term or long-term. And you can issue it privately, and that's a loan. Okay? What you're doing is you're loaning them the use of your name, your corporate entity. The collateral has to have a market value at the time the bond is issued that is at least equal to the value of the bonds. They have a minimum insurance bond of $250,000, folks. That's the minimum surety bonds. What they're running these courts with, $350 bond for failure to appear for jury duty, has to be a municipal bond of some sort. Because a federal minimum federal insurance bond is $250,000. The value of the collateral is periodically reassessed to make sure it still matches the value initially pledged. This is why they have to keep accountings and do what they call as saying, ASSAYING. It's as saying. Well, who's doing the as saying? Them or you? Is it your value or theirs? Why are you going by a market value? Do you intend to sell it? Does it have the same unique kind of structured value as other things in the market that they're trying to claim it's comparable to? They do this in the real estate market. When they try to assess the value of a house for tax purposes, they've got to determine Well, they can't assess the same tax value for a one-bedroom house that's a ranch style with no walkout or anything, just one story, one bedroom with no garage or anything, to that of a three-story, 5-bedroom, two bath, um, fully loaded finished basement with drive-in garage attached. You know, they can't do those same kind of comparability, so they have to do market research to make sure it's comparable. This is the thing that they're not doing, um, or you're not doing, I should say, is because that identification is not comparable to what your capacity is. If you're not a corporate entity, then you shouldn't have a corporate identification. This is a public accommodation, again, saying that you're a corporate entity providing public accommodation and not discriminating. Whereas if in your private capacity, you have private credentials, it is your own discriminatory discernment as to whether you want to visit some cake factory that refuses to make cakes for people that are gay. That's up to you. You can discriminate that. That's what discrimination really means. You can make your own discernment. Greetings, JG. How you doing tonight, brother?
Yo, what's up, Wizard? What's going on, man?
I'm just crashing the party. So we continue on, and it says, if over time the value of the collateral falls below the agreed upon minimum, the issuer has to put up additional securities or cash as collateral. And this is the inconsistency with the statement earlier that a cooperative trust puts most all of its assets. No, it doesn't. A cooperative trust knows how to run its business and only puts up the assets that are assessed the value of the contracts that it's involved in. It doesn't have to balloon anything. It doesn't have to engorge anything to bring up any extra kind of credit or faith. It's just enough equal consideration and equal benefit, pure and simple. Other than that, I agree totally so far. This kind of bond is considered safer than an unsecured bond. However, the trade-off with greater safety is a lower yield and therefore lower payout. Well, we're not looking to get rich. We're only looking to be prosperous so that as long as our cup is full and overwhelming, it doesn't have to overwhelm so much, again, that it engorges everything around us. Let me grab the link here real quick and drop that for you. And appreciate you asking. Sometimes I forget to keep up. Hopkins here says trusts reach the highest federal marginal income tax rate at much lower thresholds than individual taxpayers, and therefore generally pay higher income taxes. And that's, again, if they're operating, JG, under that principle of public accommodation as a public corporation offering things to the public. It's not a matter of making those public offerings. Everything is offered as a unregistered security under a private trust. There's just a slight but distinct difference. Understanding collateral trust bonds, again, it's a corporate bond. We're not issuing corporate bonds. We're issuing private trust bonds, which it has the same standing, just a different setup. You're not creating insurance documents. You're creating a security instrument yourself. It's a bill of exchange. Is a bond issued by a company to raise capital for its short-term debt obligations or long-term capital projects. So we're not interested in raising capital if we come forth with the asset that the collateral document is saying. We've already got the capital. So this is for people like startup corporations that don't know what they're doing. And again, they're using that identification to be a corporation under the laws of the United States. That's a military occupation. It's a battle of the forms. You will forever be filling out tax forms and UCCs and 1099s and and talking to bankers and lawyers and being sued and trying to sue. That's not your purpose in this world.
First trust was founded by Ben Franklin.
Okay, so again, in return for the loan provided by the investors. So if you're the one that's got the investment, if you're the one that's got the asset, other people want to um, do a contract and use that as collateral. You can be the investor, and they owe you. So by coming into a contract as the investor to allow their contract to become mechanized, you provide the asset that covers the contract. Now you get to benefit from that investment. You get a return on it. So any of their long this is getting ridiculous. So anything that you have as a asset that's used as a collateral investment in anything, you should get a return on. So when that document is found at the county registrar and the beneficiary makes a claim to it, that's the asset, and you have to be able to place that value in it. And that's what we're finding is the creation of a cooperative trust based on that asset. The claim, it's already been instrumentalized. It just doesn't have its financial statement, its market value. And so you get a repayment of the principal investment. You're the beneficiary, and you're supposed to be repaid. Understand that. It says repays the principal investment. Mom made their principal investment, and you're supposed to be the beneficiary of that, and you haven't been repaid after you paid everything into the system. Like I said, that document is a prepayment. If you come forth at the age of 18 and make a claim on that document, guess what, folks? They can't use it in commerce and make those claims against you. But again, this is that being prepared part, that if you're going to do that, you better be able to teach your next generation to come up with private credentials. You better be able to learn how to provide those private credentials through these cooperative trusts. You want your next generation to be a beneficiary of that trust. You name them as such. That's the private credential. And again, they can't violate contracts. Interference of contracts is a violation of international law. Why? Because they're privacy. The first element of contracting is privacy. So if you really want a private trust, you have to make it a contract form. Understand this. In their legal system. Because companies prefer to issue debt with as low an interest rate as possible, they will seek out ways to reduce their cost of borrowing. One way to do this is by securing the bond issued with collateral through security called the collateral trust bond. One way to do this is by securing the bond issued with collateral through a security called the collateral trust bond. A collateral trust bond has a claim against a security or basket of securities. So a collateral trust bond on a private side would be a claim against the security, which would be the asset itself, being held in escrow. Okay, this has nothing to do with government. It's not a securities exchange agreement like the James A. Williams Trust that we saw. That is for him to invest in the government for a credit system, like maybe a credit union himself. But as a cooperative trust, you operate privately through assets, and you keep your contracts based on those assets rather than the fiat currency and the administrative probate court system. This way you stay in the international law. They can't bring you into a foreign court. Those courts are foreign to you people, and if they're going to try to use those administrative courts against you, again, that's why I spoke about the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act last night. You're not a corporate entity. You're a cooperative trust that can perform in a corporate capacity on the private side. You don't have to have the organizational laws of the United States to operate in a corporate capacity. That's only if you want to operate under their employment, for their public accommodation, through their public identification system, which is the Interstate Identification Index, meaning their accounting index. Not part of it. I'm not part of their general journal, and I'm not part of their general ledger. However, with the armistice, any contract is placed with that proper authority through a real estate investment trust. Again, one of the basic contents of a cooperative trust is the real estate that they invest in, and it's not actually a real estate in the or an investment in the land. It's a redemption of the land. Again, if you want equity, you got to bring equity, and that means you got to learn how to do the redemptions. That way, once you do one redemption, guess what? Now you've proven yourself studied to shew thyself worthy and approved to be a redeemer with him. Now you can bring him with you everywhere you go and show and prove again and again and again and again that you are a redeemer. And again, the redeeming is just a mere correction. I'm sorry. Did you think you owned this land? You don't have a right to ownership. I'm in use and possession. You'll have to wait until I'm done. It's a matter of doing. And let me point out to you that in the Liber Code, it says that if the owner has not fled and the commanding officer shall cause receipts to be issued, they may serve the spoliated owner indemnification. Article 38. Read it. Again, another portion of that belligerent combatant stuff. If you're going to stand there and suppose that you're standing your ground and be belligerent, then it's not necessarily that you fled. Of course not. But you were belligerent, so they had to haul your ass away. But if you do not flee and you stand there and you speak boldly as you ought to, it even says in the scripture that they shall flee when none pursue. So they're the ones that are going to turn around and leave. And it's merely a matter of knowing the truth and putting it in the record, because that's where it's at. The record is in error. It's not true. I have to put the truth into the record. And that truth is your redemption, your repentance. You have to let them know that you understand your mistakes, your errors, your accidents, and where they are and how to fix them. Again, that private credential showing that you already operate under a trust. You have your living will. You live the will of our Father which art in heaven, constantly affirming that, so that you are to be careful to maintain good works. This is because you don't want to keep making the same mistakes. Greetings, I-Man. And with that, we are about done. What do we got going on with the board? What are your questions, concerns, compliments, and all that? And we're done for the night. So it's time for the people to speak.
Greetings, return to all. What time did you, what time is your start time?
9 o'clock. And I again apologize for the misscheduling there. I got excited yesterday when I scheduled yesterday's stream and scheduled this one at the same time, and I didn't realize it. So my apologies if you didn't get a notice for the nights.
I haven't been getting the notice. In fact, I just kind of noticed you were on. So
yeah, I'm gonna try to start doing these every night, folks. So And I'm trying to get a hold of John Lacrone again for tomorrow night. See if he wants to join us then. But it is New Year's Eve, so we'll keep that in the background.
Yeah.
But I will be on tomorrow night for a short time.
I've been busy reviewing your other videos, and that's why I didn't really, so, but it's all good. I keep pushing, I keep learning, right?
That's all we can do, and that's all. Again, that's all I'm professing, folks, is that this is a learning process, and if we keep going into it as a belligerent, professing that we know things and not admitting to our own errors, it's going to do nothing but keep causing the same damn problems that we're experiencing by not recognizing our own faults. You have to be self-critical. You have to learn how to grow up. You are full-grown boys and girls. It's time to start learning what the real problems are. And I'm telling you, if you don't understand this identification system, I've given you knowledge of these codes and where they're at. And that reminds me, let me look up that Iowa code real quick. But that's where it's at, is having the knowledge. And it's out there. And we have to realize that there comes a time that we have to pick up a book and start learning and taking upon our own cognition. So let me pull this up. And all you do is put in your code, like I did. I put in Iowa code resident determination. That's all you got to do. Your state, and then the word code, and then resident determination, and it will show you what your state is using for a resident determination. And I'm not seeing too many that use anything other than military or income tax purposes. This one here says resident determination. For Iowa individual income tax purposes, an individual is a resident if the individual maintains a permanent place of abode within the state. That's that address. You filled out a resident address form at the post office. The individual is domiciled in the state. An individual who is determined to be a resident of Iowa is subject to Iowa income tax on all the individual's income for the taxable year, no matter whether the income is earned within Iowa or outside of Iowa, except when an item of income is specifically exempted from taxation by a provision of federal or Iowa law. So just by giving the address, you are giving a determination of being a resident for individual income tax purposes. This is why I made that discernment before the court in regards to the jury duty. I am not a resident. My apologies if that has been presented before, but I understand that determination is for income tax purposes. Obviously, I have had no income tax for over 7 years. I've not had a bank account for over 7 years. I've not been employed for over 7 years. Over the table or under the table, I do not act as a Babylonian whore anymore. You like that, huh? That's literally what you're doing, folks. You're bending over for them, whether it's over the table or under the table. They don't care if it's public or private. If you're bending over, they're going to take a piece. Quit bending over. All you got to do is stand up, and that's by learning.
So they're basically Jerry Sandusky from Penn State.
Come on, let's not get too perverted. Anyway,
Keith, you mentioned an article before in the Lieber Code. What was that? I missed it.
Oh, Article 38, talking about if the owner has not fled. Let me pull that up real quick. Article 38 is under Section 2, which is public and private property of the enemy. And it says protection of persons, and especially of women, of religion, the arts and sciences. Knowledge is a science. Punishment of crimes against the inhabitants of hostile countries. when we go down to Article 38, it tells us about those receipts. You know, everybody keeps asking about receipts. Let me give you a receipt. Article 38 says private property, unless forfeited by crimes or by offense of the owner, can be seized only by way of military necessity for the support or other benefit of the Army or of the United States, concurring with Article 10 that we read earlier. However, it goes on to say, if the owner has not fled, the commanding officer will cause receipts to be given, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. This is their law, their word, and it says the commanding officer will. He has no option to deny it. He has a higher command. You.
May I, Keith?
Feel free.
In the use of Article 10 and now Article 38, the practices that they are doing with a lot of the people on the land, were doing this kidnapping of people. So are
Yep.
they doing that in relation to these two codes so they can have control over property belonging to people? I'm just trying to get clarity, if I may.
This is 52 and 53 of the Libra Code. No belligerent has the right to declare that he will treat every captured man in arms of a levy en masse as brigand or bandit. If, however, the people of a country or any portion of the same already occupied by an army rise against it, they are violators of the laws of war and are not entitled to their protection. Article 53, the enemy's chaplains, officers of the medical staff, apothecaries, hospital nurses, and servants, if they fall into the hands of the American Army, are not prisoners of war unless the commander has reasons to retain them. This is the resident deemed necessary by the board. It's all voluntary. In this latter case, or if at their own desire, voluntarily, they are allowed to remain with their captured companions, they are treated as prisoners of war and may be exchanged as their commander sees fit. So again, that identification is a military identification, and as long as you keep posing that you're part of the military, they will take you as the officer, or as the commanding officer sees fit. That makes sense to everybody? Anybody got questions? Let's look at the next one real quick for you, dear, because next one talks about a hostage is a person accepted as a pledge for the fulfillment of agreement concluded between belligerents during the war or in consequence of a war. Hostages are rare in the present age. Bullshit. As it says, a hostage is a person accepted as a pledge. You signing that name and them taking you to jail for signing that name is because you pledged, and they're taking you as the pledge. That is a hostage. You signed a commercial instrument, and under 24 Deuteronomy 24:7, he that steal one of the children of the brethren of Israel and make merchandise of him is kidnapping and shall be put to death. Ye shall put evil away from amongst you.
But the other question that I have, Keith, is that if you're kidnapped and you have no ID, no identification, or any of those things, because I've heard someone else made mention about that, they are literally have you under piracy to enforce these
Yeah,
paper
that's that's the
chattel
law
on
of the
them.
that's the law of the flag stuff. That's why I say, go. Who do you think the taxes are owed to, people? Do you remember 26 USC 6201? It talks about taxes are duly paid by stamp. It doesn't say Federal Reserve notes. It says under 12 USC 411 that those Federal Reserve notes are for transfer or advances from Federal Reserve institution by Federal Reserve agents, and they're for payment of taxes and such. So the Federal Reserve is the one that's supposed to be paying the taxes to begin with, and it says taxes are paid duly by stamp. Yet through the Federal Reserve, you can pay them with Federal Reserve notes, but only if you're acting as a transfer agent. Guess what that ID is? That ID is what allows you to go down to a goddamn bank and open a bank account as a transfer agent, and not distinguishing that it's a private trust account and you are one of the directors of a trust that has its own board, not subject to the Selective Service. And I'm telling you what, folks, it's been a long journey, but like I said again, I can tell you every detail on that identification, why it's there, and what it means. It's all military. It's all incorporating you as a firm investor, and your word is firm and sound, and they're gonna anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They are firm about it.
Well, yo, Keith, did you know that you could get a free checking account and a digital wallet with there's a company called Branch.
Branch what? Just Branch?
Yeah, it's just called Branch. They do debit cards.
I'll have to do some research on it. That's a new one to me, because you guys know I'm looking for somebody that can can hook my PayPal card up to, that will give it validation without having to actually go out in the community and open another bank account. I'm looking for another, it would be the same kind of thing we're talking about right here, a cooperative trust, where I've got two entities that are validating my information is true and correct, and therefore it's already blockchained. See, that's the problem. The information, folks, it's already blockchained. You don't have to give them any more information. It's already there.
Yeah, also look up Evolve Bank and Trust. That's what I'm under.
Evolve?
Yeah,
Bank and Trust.
EVOLV Trust. Bank and Trust.
All right. Okay, well, folks, unless we got anything else, witness, Brielle, you got anything? Please let us know. Otherwise, we're going to say our goodbyes, and like I said, I'll be back again tomorrow night with something. All right.
Real quick, I'll just say I watched your Jacob's Ladder video last night, and I really appreciate the idea of Moses as man you all, Jesus as spirit you all.
Yes,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely. That's Moses brought the law. In other words, he brought it in the words. That's the manual. And Jesus taught the law. That's where it got its merits, its spiritual credence, was faith is dead without works. So Jesus showed you how to work it. So work it.
Supposedly.
Yes. It works if you work it. So work it.
Yeah. And then tonight, real quick, about cooperative land trust. My mind has been set on the trust being for the children, but it's very inspiring to hear about, just this rising of knowledge to where, members of a trust could join and contribute to building a strong network of continuous and collaborative work. And therefore, it's more about the knowledge, like you said. That is it, because here I am. I'm just one person.
Yeah, if you've got a cooperative trust, and in that cooperative trust, you've got a 50-year-old man that's been in the banking industry for 30 years. He's a good one to have in your cooperative trust. but you have to convince him that it's based upon knowledge, and he's got to be open to outside knowledge that he's not used to because he was trained in that profession. That's an imperative thing. You cannot get people that are coming in to these cooperative trusts thinking they're going to run that portion of the trust because they're the know-it-all in it. It's a plenipotentiary thing. You have to be able to, again, know if you're going to involve a banker, you have to know the banking just as much as he does. And so he's got to be open to new information, just like you got to be open to new information that he might know that you don't yet. That's how this stuff works.
And Keith, what is a plenipotentiary trust?
No,
Did
it's
I
not
say it correctly?
Yeah, it's not a plenipotentiary trust. It's a plenipotentiary power. In other words, it's a power to be able to administrate yourself in all affairs. You have, they call them plenary powers, PLENARY, plenary powers. And what it says is you're able to self-govern. You know all your postal matters, your tax matters, financial matters, banking matters, contract, trust. You can do it all across the board because you're careful to maintain good works that are profitable. Because you don't want to be a dummy getting involved in something that's going to hurt yourself. That's all it is.
Are these the new powers that's going to be transmitted throughout the land? Because I think a gentleman named Mark Christopher was talking about those are the powers that he has to grant throughout, you know, the land for these post. I thought he called them postmasters. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's, you know, if you want to try to follow that, go ahead. But I assure you, folks, English started in all lowercase. If you think somebody making up a new, modern, I mean very modern, grammatical English to say that that corrects the English, they're wrong. You can quantify it as a mathematical equation all you want, but you can't change the form and say it's mathematically wrong. It wasn't based on mathematics. It was based on adopting other languages and changing the phonemes and the sounds because of the construction of IE with EI and this and that and all different kinds of different grammatical constructions. You can't take it and all of a sudden just say, well, it's a mathematical error. It doesn't work like that. And you can't take it and make it all uppercase with hyphens in between every goddamn term. It doesn't work like that. Latin started out all uppercase. English started out all lowercase. Everybody's reading everything upside down and backwards. And now we have English in all uppercase and Latin in all lowercase. The fuck is wrong with people? Quit it.
Well, Keith, I do agree with you because English isn't all lowercase, and that's the way all writings were previously to now. And so when you talk about the uppercase letters, those are considered Roman letters, and they're all uppercase, and they are for signing. So
Correct.
that's where the signage comes in, and that's where they use the signage to create titles and certificates to hold one accountable for their, you know, the government's authority. They try to pull
Yep.
you in, and they use those signage to entice you, to get you into participation. I yield.
Yep. And when it comes to KY in the comments says, Judge asking you know what's the word corroboration mean? COR is root for core, the central point, rob, central thief, oration. It's the way that you rob through your words. When you corroborate or cooperate, those are two different things. Corroboration, exactly as it says, you're robbing through your oration. That's the core element, is you're using the words as a robbery.
So your oration will be the presentation or the narration that you create for yourself, correct?
Correct. That's the corp oration, the body oration. People, corpse doesn't mean dead, as so many people seem to be confused about. It simply means body. You have to put dead corpse in front of it for it to mean dead. Okay? So a corporation is not a dead entity. It's just a corporation. It's a body oration. That means it's the word of a body of people. It's their word. It's their cooperative agreement. That's the corporation, period. And with that, we are done. I again appreciate everybody's support. There's a PayPal link in the bottom in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. And remember, folks, I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. So make sure God blesses you and have a good night. We'll see everybody next time. Bye now.